So yesterday we talked about the best player from every NFL team. You guys seem to really like that video. Likes were up. I like it. Let's see if we can go ahead and make this video my most liked video ever. I know that's shooting for a lot, but we'll see. This is the most underrated player from all 32 NFL teams. Of course, as you might expect, that's going to be a follow-up with the most overrated player from every NFL team. So make sure to subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Also, check me out on Twitter and Instagram. Every link is linked down in the description below. But before we get into all 32 most underrated players in the NFL by team, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about an awesome sponsor in FendOff. So FendOff is a new free social sports game where you can use your knowledge of sports to compete against other players and win actual prizes. Players are able to make sporting picks and enter contests where you can compete against other players, climb weekly leaderboards, and enter seasonal leagues and earn achievements, real prizes. Every player starts with 2,000 gold coins and 500 sweeps. Players receive 200 gold coins every 2 hours and 100 sweeps every 12 hours to be used on the platform. But you can go ahead and claim your free gold and sweeps. It's going to take you to this screen again. You can claim 200 GC, gold coins every 2 hours, and 100 sweeps every 12 hours. You just go ahead, click claim, it'll be deposited directly into your account. So yesterday, I went ahead and picked the Yankees in the London series. I am a Yankees fan. You guys know I'm a pretty big baseball fan. I'm going to pick the Yankees again. We're going to go with the winner, and we're going to go all in. I have that much faith in my New York Yankees. We can also switch to sweeps and wager in that as well. So we click it again, switch to sweeps, and we can just go all in. Go big or go home, right? So now if we go ahead and click on contests, here's the great thing about it. I don't have any sweeps right now because I just wagered them for the game that you're watching today, Yankees-Red Sox, but they have free contests that you can choose from. So we're going to go to free MLB sweeps contest, and you can see the payout structure based on what position you finish in, and all you have to do is pick correctly, do the best, and you will earn the highest reward. So for this contest, I'm taking the Yankees, Indians, Royals, Cubs, Marlins, Nationals, Rays, Brewers, Astros, Dodgers, who are unbelievable at home, Diamondbacks, Athletics, Padres, and Braves. All you have to do is submit your entry, and then you're good to go. So this week, I have partnered up with FendOff to run 5 daily baseball contests where the champions each day will win 20,000 sweeps, and that can be redeemed for up to $200 in prizes. All you guys have to do is click the link down in the description. It'll be in the top line. You can play for free after you make an account, and it's easy money if you do well. So as the best player on the Raiders in that video, if you guys haven't checked out that video, by the way, definitely make sure to check it out. I maybe will leave an eye in the top right or left corner, wherever that pops up. But the most underrated player on the Raiders is actually a new addition as well, in LaMarcus Joyner. Previously had been on the Rams for his entire career and was a very, very versatile player. Played a little bit of cornerback, both on the boundary, mainly in the nickel. Has also played some safety for the Rams. He's an extremely versatile defensive back that gives the Raiders a lot of options moving forward. Should be a very, very good safety combo if they're going to play that in Oakland and soon to be Las Vegas with Carl Joseph. Maybe Jonathan Abrams back there. Maybe Carl Joseph and Jonathan Abrams are back there, but LaMarcus Joyner stays in the slot. His versatility makes him an extremely valuable player, and he's played very, very well as well. So it's not just versatility, but it's ability while being versatile. LaMarcus Joyner is a stud, and that's why he's the most underrated player on this Raiders team. The most underrated player in the Chiefs probably shouldn't come as any surprise. It's going to be Chris Jones. The former Mississippi State Bulldog defensive tackle has basically played like a Bulldog in the NFL. He's been vicious, mean. Now, Bulldogs are super sweet in real life, but Chris Jones, all jokes aside, has been unbelievable. He's played 16 games every year of his career. However, he's started less than 12 every season and has still been very, very productive. He's putting up pressure numbers similar to what Aaron Donald has done at the start of his career. Obviously, last year, Aaron Donald was on a completely other level, but a lot of people don't even know about Chris Jones at all. Not only the fact that he might be the best defensive tackle not named Aaron Donald in the entire NFL. Last year, his numbers were absolutely silly. Put up 15.5 sacks from that defensive tackle spot, almost a 3 technique, and sometimes even playing over center in Kansas City. 29 quarterback hits from defensive tackle is unbelievable. 19 tackles for loss. Chris Jones really can do it all, and he makes that Chiefs defense at least somewhat formidable. They have not been fantastic, but Chris Jones on that team has been fantastic. His name needs to be brought up a lot more when you're talking about the best defensive tackles in the NFL, and I'm sure as he continues his career, it absolutely will be. Continuing the trend now with the Denver Broncos, it's another younger player. All these guys are pretty much in their mid-20s. Justin Simmons is only 25 years old, turning 26 in 2019. But this is another versatile player. Has played some free safeties, played some strong safeties, been moved around a little bit. And Justin Simmons has been an immediate impact player for the no-fly zone in Denver. Now, they're not as good as they used to be, but Justin Simmons keeps them at least somewhat decent. Now, I think he's been a little bit misutilized, but now that Vic Fangio's in Denver, now that there's new coaching all over the place in Denver, I think Justin Simmons is going to be used more to his strengths. He's a tremendous player in general, very good tackler, 97 combined tackles last year, still put up 3 interceptions as well. So this is a guy that can cover and tackle. He's a versatile do-it-all safety. Doesn't quite have the versatility that LaMarcus Joyner has. I'm not sure you're going to see a whole lot of Justin Simmons playing boundary cornerback, but then again, very, very rarely are you going to see cornerbacks doing that. Tyrann Mathieu is maybe the only exception I can think of, but Justin Simmons is still incredible nonetheless. Another guy that really does not get talked a whole lot about, but still a very, very good player, a very productive player, and I think 2019 is going to have big things in store for this no-fly zone safety. When it comes to the LA Chargers, I think a lot of people are aware they have 2 very, very good edge rushers. I just feel like Joey Bosa gets a lot of the hype there, and I'm not even sure he's the best one on that team. I think the most underrated player on the Chargers is Melvin Ingram. He's one of the best edge rushers in the entirety of the NFL. That's a trend. You're going to hear me use that phrase a lot over the course of this video. But Melvin Ingram simply, again, does not get talked about nearly enough. Recorded 70 pressures last season. So even though you see a sack total and you say, 7, not exactly incredible for an edge rusher, but he has an impact that's so huge. And especially playing without Joey Bosa for a decent part of, the past 2 years, with Bosa having some injury concern, some injury issues, Ingram has still been incredibly productive. And when you're an edge rusher, it isn't all about sacks. It's about generating that pressure, forcing bad throws, giving opportunities for other teammates to clean up on the quarterback. And Ingram does that about as well as anybody in the NFL. 70 pressures is absolutely obscene. And when you're talking about some of the best edge rushers in the NFL, Melvin Ingram is not a name that jumps out, but he is a stud nonetheless. Definitely the most underrated player in the Chargers. If I had to give an honorable mention for the Chargers, though, I definitely want to throw in Desmond King. I think a lot of Chargers fans know how good he is. He's one of the best nickel cornerbacks in the NFL, if not the best. Another versatile guy that can play some safety. Doesn't really get talked a whole lot about either, but I just think he's only been incredible for 1 year, and that was last year. Ingram's been really good for a while, and still very underrated. Still not talked about nearly enough, but Desmond King maybe could take over that spot depending on how this next season goes and if Melvin Ingram gets a little more buzz. When you talk about the Rams, they have so many talents on offense that jump to mind before this player. You talk about Todd Gurley, nearly won MVP. Jared Goff is a young star at quarterback. And then you look at their receivers, you go, okay, Cooper Kupp is great. Brandon Cooks is great. But Robert Woods is the most underrated player in this team because he was arguably the team's best receiver last year. Had a breakout season, caught 86 passes for 1,200 yards and 6 touchdowns. Is versatile, can play the slot, can play on the outside. Robert Woods is a really, really good receiver. And even though he just did have his breakout year, this is a guy that was not getting talked about a whole lot leading up to that ever. Certainly not in Buffalo. And even now, you still don't really hear his name brought up, even within the top 15 or 20 receivers. And Robert Woods definitely deserves some buzz. He was great last year. The most underrated player on the Cardinals is a new addition to that team as well. A lot of new additions being the most underrated players on these teams out west. But Jordan Hicks is one of the better linebackers in the NFL, one of the better do-it-all players in the NFL. He's a linebacker that can cover, rush the passer, and certainly tackle. The only real knock on Jordan Hicks over the past few years has been staying on the field and staying healthy. Only played 12 games last season, 7 games in 2017, but it still has been really, really productive when he's been on the field. In only 12 games last season, Jordan Hicks, 91 tackles, 3 sacks, showcasing some of that ability. He's one of the better cover linebackers in the NFL, as I said. In 2016, 5 interceptions, but of course, interceptions don't tell the full story about how good a cover linebacker is, but Jordan Hicks, certainly a good cover linebacker, makes that Arizona LB core a little bit better for sure. We'll see if Hassan Reddick can come along as well. Of course, former first-round pick for the Cardinals, I believe 2 drafts ago in 2018. But Jordan Hicks, certainly gets no love. Didn't when he was in Philadelphia. Former Texas Longhorn. I've loved him for a while. Hated him that he was on the Philadelphia Eagles. Is certainly not my favorite team. But in Arizona, still probably not going to get a whole lot of love. It's in Arizona. It's a smaller market. Still a beast. We'll see how he does in 2019. Praying for a healthy season for him. It was just in the 2018 draft that the Seahawks spent a first-round pick on a running back in Rashad Penny. And he's not even the best running back on the team. Not even close. The best running back is obviously Chris Carson. He's also the most underrated player in the Seahawks as well. You hear about Russell Wilson, Bobby Wagner, of course, formerly Earl Thomas when he was there, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman when he was there. Of course, a lot of those guys are gone at this point. Doug Baldwin, who's recently retired, who was the most underrated player there for a while. Tyler Lockett certainly warrants conversation as well. But Chris Carson really gives Rashad Penny no opportunity to even play. Chris Carson had a great year last year. 1,151 yards, 9 touchdowns, averaged over 4.5 yards per carry, was also versatile as a receiver, caught 20 passes for 163 yards. Chris Carson definitely revitalized that offense last year. Of course, a lot of times they try to go power run and they just didn't really have the backs to get it done. Of course, Christian Michael was there getting carries. They had... who was the guy with the huge arms? Why can't I remember his name? Robert Turbin, who hasn't been there since 2014, but CJ Procise was there. JD McKissick. They had Thomas Rawls, obviously Marshawn Lynch, but they had so many running backs. The last one you're going to think of is probably Chris Carson. He's only 24 years old, approaching his 25-year-old season in 2019. Probably going to have a big year ahead of him. Definitely should get some more buzz, some more hype as one of the better running backs in the NFL. The most underrated player on the San Francisco 49ers also happens to be one of the most underrated players in the NFL, and that's DeForest Buckner. He was a former high pick out of Oregon, went top 10 in the 2016 NFL Draft, and really, it's a name you don't hear about, and DeForest Buckner has been really, really good. Had arguably his best season last year, posted 13 sacks, 53 pressures from the inside at defensive tackle. You talk about how the 49ers, they can't seem to draft defensive line correctly. Solomon Thomas looks like a bust. Eric Armstead looks like a bust, but one that has not been at all is DeForest Buckner. Top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL, and again, not a name you hear enough about at all. Can stop the run, can get after the quarterback, really does it all. Had 37 defensive stops last year. That is a Pro Football Focus stat where it's a stop at or near the line of scrimmage. Again, beast. Really incredible player. One of the best in the entire NFL at his position. Definitely the most underrated player on this 49ers team. Jumping now to Indianapolis, we're going to head over to the Colts. And they had a lot of guys that performed way above their pay grade last year. You look at Kenny Moore. You look at Pierre Desir. Maybe even Eric Ebron, because I think a lot of people still think he sucks from his time with the Lions, although he's been great with Andrew Luck at the helm. But I think the most underrated player in this team is going to stick with the defensive lineman trend that we're going, and that's going to be Jabaal Sheard. Former New England Patriot, has been really, really good for the Colts, has been an unsung hero for that team, certainly. He's one of the better defensive linemen in the NFL, one of the better edge rushers, and he posts some silly stats. Now, only had 7 sacks last year, but 64 quarterback pressures, 48 hurries, batted down a few balls at the line, and of course, you see 36 tackles. You're like, that's not extremely impressive, but he is an edge rusher. There are going to be fewer opportunities to get those tackles, and of course, those 7 sacks were across the entire season, so we're including in that the divisional round of the playoffs against the Chiefs. He had 32 stops last year. This guy performs in any environment, whether it's New England, gigantic market, or Indianapolis, a little bit smaller for sure. He plays and he comes hard on every down. Pause. Jabaal Sheard, definitely the most underrated player in the Colts, but there are a lot of guys that you could choose from. Malik Hooker, one of the best safeties in the NFL. People don't want to hear me say it. Look up his numbers. Averaged like 0.3 yards allowed per snap last year, or something ridiculous. I might have to pull up the numbers on that. In fact, I'm going to. All right, I don't know what that cadence I was speaking with was, but it was a little bit weird. However, Malik Hooker, per all safeties that played at least 500 snaps, had the very bottom for yards allowed per snap at 0.10. The next highest, or next lowest, I guess, was Damontae Casey with .18, and he had like 8 interceptions last year or something crazy. But yeah, Malik Hooker averaged the very lowest in the entire NFL for yards per snap. So this is a guy that needs some more buzz as well. But I think I'm still sticking with Jabal Sheard despite Malik Hooker being unbelievable. The most underrated player on the Texans is Whitney Merciless. Now, he's a few years removed from a career high of 12 sacks in 2015. And he's been a little bit injury prone over the past couple years. But when he's healthy, when he's on the field, this is a guy that makes plays. He's a really, really good rotational edge. And even a guy that does a lot more than that with J.J. Watt moving inside on certain downs. With Jadeveon Clowney, Whitney Merciless, J.J. Watt, that's one of the best pass rush combos in the NFL. Whitney Merciless is a big reason why. And not exactly a name you're going to bring up in conversation when talking about some of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Probably still the best kept secret in the NFL. Jarriel Casey is certainly the most underrated player in Tennessee. Of course, defensive tackle, 3-4 defensive end in their scheme. Recorded 44 quarterback pressures to go along with 8 sacks last year. Jarriel Casey is a beast. Also, 35 defensive stops as well. Just a guy that makes plays and really 3-4 defensive ends, defensive tackles, they don't get talked about a whole lot. Jarriel Casey definitely is worthy of the praise that he gets, but he deserves more of it. I think if most people could pronounce his name, he wouldn't be as underrated as he is, but Yannick Ngakoue is the most underrated player in Saxonville with the Jacksonville Jaguars. In Duval, Yannick Ngakoue is a very, very talented player, very good edge rusher. When you hear about edge rushers in Jacksonville, you're hearing about Calais Campbell, now Josh Allen, who they drafted out of Kentucky, but Yannick Ngakoue is the real deal. Defends the run pretty well as well. Recorded 64 pressures to go along with 10 sacks a season ago, 21 defensive stops. Really, really good player. And, of course, his name is pronounced Yannick Ngakoue. Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, you guys are going to get it. Trust me. I have faith in you. The most underrated player in Atlanta is Grady Jarrett. Kind of had his coming out party in the Super Bowl a few years ago where he had 3 sacks on Tom Brady in that game. But Grady Jarrett was not a one-game player. He's not a one-hit wonder. Has been great every game after that, especially last season. Played a total PFF grade of 91.0 where he had 53 quarterback pressure from defensive tackle, a crazy number. We see Aaron Donald doing, like 80 plus. Those are unheard of, even for a lot of edge rushers. Grady Jarrett had 53 from defensive tackle to go along with 6 sacks, 30 defensive stops. This is a guy that does it all, does not get talked about at all. I know he's playing under the franchise tag this next season. This is someone that I see getting a gigantic contract in 2020. Although it's difficult to find one based on how much Saints fans talk about every one of their players, I think Sheldon Rankin is still pretty underrated. The most underrated player from the New Orleans Saints down in NOLA. Sheldon Rankin was a first-round pick in 2016 and has lived up to that hype even if you haven't heard about him. 46 pressures last year, 29 stops. A guy that really doesn't get any love, and I know it's a defensive tackle. That's mainly the theme of this video is defensive linemen don't get praised nearly enough. Offensive linemen really not making this list, but that's a different story. A little bit tougher with them to grade, but Sheldon Rankin's for sure very, very underrated. And I was just talking about how not a whole lot of offensive linemen on this list. Well, here's one. We're going to Carolina. We're going to talk about Darryl Williams. Was a free agent this year that's going back to Carolina, and he's one of the best right tackles in the NFL, if not a top 5 right tackle. You think about right tackles, Lane Johnson, maybe the first name that pops into mind. Darryl Williams should be in that same conversation. Certainly one of the better bookends in the NFL. Really, really good player. Injuries, I think, stopped him from getting a huge contract this past offseason. Going down to Tampa Bay now, Mike Evans gets all the love at the receiver position. They've got a lot of good players in Tampa Bay. If O.J. Howard could stay on the field, he would probably be making this list, but he missed some games last season. Chris Godwin is the most underrated player on the Bucs. Had a breakout season last year in his second year at just the age of 22, where he had 59 catches for 842 yards and 7 touchdowns in just 5 starts. I think now with Adam Humphries out of Tampa Bay, Chris Godwin is poised to make a big impact. No Deshaun Jackson taking targets away either. This is Godwin's big year to go over 1,000 and into double-digit touchdown territory. Should start all 16 games for the Bucs if he stays healthy. The most underrated player on the Ravens is Michael Pierce, another defensive lineman. This one really not going to get a whole lot of pressures for you. Not exactly a great pass rush threat up the middle, but he's a nose tackle. He's 340 pounds, still managed to get 20 pressures last year, and 22 stops. Really, really good player. He's a nose tackle. He eats up blocks. He does the dirty work, and he makes the job way easier for every other defensive lineman. Everybody in the front seven, really, on that Baltimore Ravens team. Part of what makes this Ravens team one of the best defenses in the NFL. I feel like Steelers fans probably knew this was coming. Cameron Hayward is the most underrated player on the Steelers. 59 pressures last year, 29 stops. Really, really productive year. And he's been so good for the Steelers pretty much every year of his career. Definitely a very, very good player. Very underrated. One of the best edge rushers in the NFL. And I think now that he's as old as he was drafted in 2011. Not super old, but I don't think this guy's ever going to get the hype he deserves, and that's a shame because he's been a really solid player over the course of his career. 9 sacks last year as well, or 11 sacks last year, I should say. 9 quarterback hits. That's a good year, especially with 59 pressures. Where's the Cam Hayward love? The most underrated player on the Browns is DaMarius Randall. I think a lot of people, they still think about him as being almost a bust, like he was with the Packers when they tried to play him out of position at cornerback. But this is a true safety. He was a true safety at Arizona State. And finally, now that he played safety for a full season in Cleveland, he was exceptional. Recorded 4 interceptions, 85 combined tackles. Very, very good numbers from a safety. He had a great year, was shut down. Really, really good player. Gets no love. He was never supposed to be a cornerback. Green Bay just likes taking all true safeties and playing him a corner. There are a lot of examples of that. Micah Hyde is one that jumps to mind. DaMarius Randall, of course, being the other that immediately jumps to mind. But Randall's been a great safety. No reason to think he won't be a great safety in 2019, playing it for just his second full year in 2019. He should be great. Now, a little bit of a down year for him last year, but based on his 2017 NFL season, where he was debatably the best cornerback in the NFL, William Jackson III has to be the most underrated player in the Bengals. He played almost 700 total snaps, did not allow 1 touchdown. His allowed passer rating was a 36.1. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you would have a higher passer rating from throwing it directly into the ground every play. I think that net's like a 38, something like that. So William Jackson had a career year, his first year of being healthy in 2017. Now, was a little bit worse last year, was still decent. Obviously, you're going to struggle when you're playing on a team as bad as that Bengals team was. Didn't have an interception last year either. Interceptions don't tell the full story. This guy is locked down. Just a little bit of a down year in 2018. I expect he's going to rebound in 2019. He had a great year in 2017, so doesn't get talked about nearly enough. I think he's a top cornerback in the NFL. William Jackson III plays on an island. The most underrated player on the Bears is Danny Trevathan. Even on my linebacker tier list, a lot of people thought I was overrating him when I put him above guys like Roquan Smith. And now Roquan was a rookie, which held him back a little bit, but Danny Trevathan has been very good for a long time. Was really good in Denver, has been really good in Chicago, and I think he's a big part of what makes that defense in Chicago, the monsters of the Midway coming back, so good. Trevathan is a beast, can cover, can tackle. He doesn't have any speed. I don't know how he gets it done. Can rush the passer. He can do it all, with very limited athleticism, at least from running in a straight line is concerned, but he's got great instincts, a great nose for the football. Seems to just have a knack for forcing turnovers, whether it's forcing fumbles, catching interceptions, getting fumble return touchdowns. Danny Trevathan kind of does it all. I don't know how he does it. He's just one of those guys. It's just a beast, despite being slower in a league where linebackers are faster than they've ever been. The most underrated player on the Packers is Kenny Clark. Packers fans probably knew this was coming as well. This is a top 3 nose tackle in the NFL, if not a top 5 defensive tackle in the entire NFL, of every defensive tackle. He plays nose. He generates a stupid amount of pressure from that spot as well. 46 pressures from that nose tackle spot last year, 35 defensive stops. There's not really a whole lot this guy can't do. Plugs up holes, eats up blocks, still gets after the quarterback. Kenny Clark is a monster. There are not a whole lot of defensive tackles in the NFL I would take over him. Aaron Donald, maybe. Chris Jones, maybe. I mean, there's a very, very short list. Aaron Donald for sure, but who after that? The most underrated player in the Lions. I wish I could say this is Kenny Golladay. I love Kenny Golladay. I think he's a beast, but it just isn't. It has to be Trey Flowers. He is a new addition to this team. He's one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Certainly top 5. Had a ridiculous year last year. 78 total pressures. 43 stops. These are some of the best numbers in the NFL. One of the best run-stuffing edge rushers. One of the best pass-rushing edge rushers. Trey Flowers does it all at a high level. I know some people were confused when Trey Flowers got a giant contract to go to the Lions in Detroit, but he's arguably the most worthy of any of these huge contracts we've seen in the past couple of years from the edge rusher spot. Trey Flowers has been a beast, and he's been so very quietly. Tom Brady and Gronk got all the love in New England. No one looks to the other side of the ball. Look at Trey Flowers. He was unbelievable. Should be very good in Detroit. Certainly a lot better than Ezekiel Ansah ever was. Another edge rusher that no one seems to know how to pronounce his name. Of course, this is Danielle Hunter, the most underrated player on the Minnesota Vikings. I know people want to call him Daniel or Danielle. I don't know why it's Danielle. I've known it's been Danielle since he was at LSU. He was a good player there at LSU, managed to get drafted in the 3rd round in 2015, and he's been very quietly productive for the Vikings ever since. Last year was probably his best year. Sure, he put up 15 sacks, but the more impressive number there for me is the 67 total pressures. So he had 49 hurries last year. Only 3 quarterback hits, because that's when he gets close. That's because when he gets close, he closes in and he takes down the quarterback. 15 sacks. So he was incredible in that regard. And of course you say, okay, he's a lighter edge rusher, only about 250 pounds. How come we're not talking about him more? He probably can only just rush the passer, right? No. He had 44 stops last year as well. Danielle Hunter, very, very good player. So when it comes for tackles for loss, whether it's a sack or otherwise, Danielle Hunter is your guy, and I think probably the best edge rusher in Minnesota. No respect to Everson Griffin, but Danielle Hunter is just better. The most underrated player on the Bills, in my opinion, you had a choice between one of the 2 safeties. It's either Jordan Poyer or it's Micah Hyde, maybe even one of the cornerbacks, in probably Levi Wallace. Levi Wallace had an unreal year last year. I just find it tough to pick a rookie for this. So I think Micah Hyde is the correct answer here. Has played some nickel cornerback, has done so at a very high level, has played some safety, has done that at a high level, excels at getting tackles. 82 in 2017 to go along with 5 interceptions. Just a crazy year. Last year, numbers went down a little bit, only 58 combined tackles, only 2 interceptions, but the impact that he has in the field is much larger than some stats could ever show. Micah Hyde is a really, really talented player and a really underrated player across the NFL, not just with the Bills, but I think he's probably the most underrated player in the Bills. If I'm wrong, you can correct me. You let me know what you think down in the comments section below. But Micah Hyde, very, very good, very underrated. Fits the bill for this video pretty well. I think it's tough to find a really underrated player in the Patriots now that Trey Flowers is gone, but the guy I'm going to go with is Lawrence Guy. Had a career year last year, graded out very, very well in the PFF system. Had a 90.2 total defense grade, 91.2 run stuff grade in that regard, or run defense grade, I should say. 32 defensive stops is great. Also had 28 total pressures as well. Pretty good for a defensive interior guy, you know, defensive tackle, if you will. Another guy that can do it all, eats up blocks, had 45 tackles last year. Was just really, really solid. Doesn't get beat a lot, holds his gap well. Lawrence Guy, I don't know that he's a great player. He certainly had a great year last year. It's going to be interesting to see what he does in 2019. Certainly underrated for right now, for sure, just because nobody really knows this guy. No pun intended. Lawrence Guy? All right, I'll leave now. When you think about the Miami Dolphins, you think it's kind of a crapshoot right now with who their best players are. There really are not a whole lot of great ones to choose from. This isn't a great roster. Maybe I'd go with Jerome Baker for the most underrated player on this team, or even Raekwon McMillan. Both are very good options. But I think the most underrated player is actually Mr. Gas Mask himself, Laremy Tunsil. When you think about Laremy Tunsil, you think about him taking a rip out of a bong and a gas mask. Not so much what he brings on the football field, but ever since he's played for the Dolphins, he's been great. Played some left guard for them early on in his career. Got moved over to left tackle where he's been exceptional. Laremy Tunsil, one of the better left tackles in the NFL. And no one talks about him in that regard. You say, hey, that's the guy that killed his draft stock by having that video release and all that crazy stuff on draft night. But Tunsil's been a beast. Definitely really good. Definitely very underrated. The most underrated player on the Jets is another guy that has some interesting off-the-field stuff in Robby Anderson. Of course, you might remember him getting pulled over for going like 130 down the highway and then telling the cop that pulled him over he was going to nut in his wife's eye. Yeah, remember that? That was pretty funny, but he's also pretty good. In just 9 starts last year, caught 50 passes, but for 752 yards and 6 touchdowns, averaging 15 yards per catch, one of the best ratios in the entire NFL. Anderson's a beast. Just got to see him stay healthy and stay out of trouble. This guy basically leads the NFL in pressures every single year. Well, he's close. He's like top 5, top 10 every year and doesn't get talked about. It's Brandon Graham. Had a great year last year. 77 total pressures. Only 7 sacks. That's why you don't hear about him enough as you should. But believe me, as a Giants fan, this guy wreaks havoc every single time he plays the Giants. He's been virtually unblockable, which he's going up against Chad Wheeler or Eric Flowers in the past. That makes a lot of sense as to why that might be. But 77 total pressures is ridiculous. 30 stops is pretty ridiculous. Brandon Graham is a beast. I hate the fact that he's on the Eagles because he's so talented, so good. He deserved that big contract extension he signed to stay in Philadelphia. Definitely the most underrated player on this team. The most underrated player on the Redskins is a former top pick out of Alabama. It's not Daron Payne. It's Jonathan Allen. He got drafted in 2017. He fell all the way to 17 because of some shoulder issues, some injury concerns. But Jonathan Allen was so good at Alabama, and he's been great in the NFL so far. Had a great year last year, 8 sacks to go along with 35 pressures, 29 defensive stops as well. Jonathan Allen, very, very good player. Again, another guy that is tough. He's on the Redskins because I liked him so much at Alabama. I thought he was going to be incredible. And so far, based on last season, he's definitely trending in that direction. Really, really underrated. Another team it's kind of tough to find a super underrated player for because Cowboys fans don't stop talking about any of them. But people called me crazy when I stuck Byron Jones in 8 tier in my cornerback tier list video. But Byron Jones is certainly that. It was kind of like a weird hybrid safety, and you're like, why did the Cowboys take this guy in the first round? Is it just because he's an insane athlete? He broke the record for the broad jump in the entire world at the Combine. For the entire world. He set a world record at the Combine. I don't think that's ever been done before or since. But he hadn't been that good. He wasn't really a good safety. Cowboys moved him to cornerback, tried him out in a new setup, new scheme, and he's been incredible. He had a great year last year, only allowed 3 touchdowns. Just such a talented player. Reception percentage was only 55.4, which is 46 catches allowed on 83 targets. Really, really good player. Another guy doesn't get any love at all. And to cap things off with my favorite team, the New York Giants, I think the most underrated player on this team, it's a toss-up. Dalvin Tomlinson definitely could get his name thrown in there. BJ Hill had a great rookie year last year, although I wouldn't consider throwing him anywhere close to that. But I think it's got to be Sterling Shepard. Has been near the top of the NFL in yards from the slot over the course of his career, and that's been playing with Odell Beckham Jr. getting a lot of targets, at least while he was in New York. I'm very sad to see him go, obviously, but Shepard's been very good. Had a great rookie year, 683 yards, 8 touchdowns, and has been less productive in terms of touchdowns during that time, but his yards per receptions has improved every year. Had 872 yards last year on 66 receptions. And when you have 13.2 yards per catch, yards per reception last year, that's trending in a very, very positive direction. This guy does a lot of things with the ball in his hand, especially when he's catching a lot of balls from the flat. He just has the ability to make you miss after the catch. So very, very good player. I like Sterling Shepard a lot. I think he's underrated. I think he doesn't get talked about nearly enough. People think he's overrated, but no, it couldn't be further from the truth. But that is going to be the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if I missed anybody. I'm sure there are a number of options from every team, so it's tough to choose all of them. But yeah, let me know down in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next one. Take it easy.
So you